I mean, it's read out loud.
Oh, well, that's a bold choice.
Passionate about, yes. Passionate about.
What? Oh, okay.
Why on earth are we talking about Heartstopper?
Oh my God, what happens next? I have to find out. There are spoilers we are going to freely talk about.
What advice would we want to give them? Welcome, everybody, to Write Out Loud. I'm Matt Casson.
And Christina.
And we are here this week talking about something that we are both very, very fond of.
Passionate about.
Passionate about, yes. Passionate about. And that
Not
is...
just fun, but passionate.
And that is...
Heartstopper.
Heartstopper. Exactly.
The books and the TV show.
Mm-hmm. And if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's on Netflix. You can watch it there. You can read all of Alice Osman's books by purchasing them wherever you get your books.
They're also available for free on tapas.com and Tumblr.
Excellent.
Although with Tumblr, you have to go backwards in order to read it forwards. So
not as efficient.
Go to Tapas. Yeah.
Go to Tapas. If you're a library patron, you can also use the Libby app.
Check them out.
And check those books out. Support your local library. It's always a good thing. Let's talk. Why on earth are we talking about Heartstopper? What brought us here?
Well, when I started watching it, it was one of those things that I either had finished a book or had finished a previous TV show, and it was probably 11:30 at night, and I wasn't quite tired yet. So I thought, everybody's talking about Heartstopper. Why don't I put on the first episode? It's only half an hour, 2:30 later.
Yes.
I'm finished with the entire series. But it wasn't just because it was good. As a writer, it had so many surprises. There were so many choices that were made by, and at that time, I didn't know that the writer was also, the writer of the books. Generally, they're not. Generally, it's someone writes the books and someone writes the screenplays. But it was the choices within the story that continued to surprise me. And not just surprise me in a way of like, oh, well, that's a bold choice. It was for the years that I've been working in writing, in publishing, for the number of years that I've been a reader, it's very easy to predict what's going to happen next in a story.
Sure.
And especially once I started doing the editorial side of it, knowing what choices make much more sense or much more dramatic or whatever, Alice continued to surprise me. I'm like, what? Oh, okay. And what surprised me was she didn't necessarily go for the typical drama, the typical angst, the typical teen drama. She made bold choices in my mind that were about hope and happiness.
Sure.
So what I mean by that is, there are spoilers. We are going to freely talk about all of the episodes, first two books that do the first two series. When Charlie and Nick are going to have their first kiss, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I kept waiting for somebody to bust in. I kept waiting for something to happen. Nick gets scared. Charlie gets scared. Something other than what unfolded so beautifully.
Sure.
We can get into much more depth when we talk about individual topics. Alice surprised me. She surprised me by the choices that she made. She surprised me by leaning into what I call hope rather than leaning into a fear-based storytelling.
Sure.
And that's something that we'll get into, again, much more in depth later, what I mean by that. But it's my opinion overall, and I'm talking about storytelling, whether that's movie, TV, book, audiobooks, same difference. We need more emotion and intrigue more than we need drama, more than we need the, oh my God, moments that are so far into the drama.
Sure.
Go watch a reality show if you want that kind of drama. And by emotion and intrigue, I'm not talking crying and laughter, but the things that draw us in, the things that connect us to story, the things that we relate to. So that's what I mean by emotion. By intrigue, I'm not talking mystery. I'm talking the things that make you turn the page. I'm talking about things that make you say to yourself, oh my God, what happens next? I have to find out. So it was that element of Heartstopper that actually made me finish the series in one sitting.
Yeah. And I love that you talked about the hope aspect of that and the fact that it wasn't the angsty type of teen love story, right? Yeah. Because there's so much of that out there. There was a story, somebody who was working in a bookstore overheard a couple of teenagers that were looking through some books and they were kind of in that general area. One of them said, oh, hey, have you read Heartstopper yet? Or have you watched Heartstopper yet? And the other person says, nah, man, it's just one of those gay stories. And the person who was working in the bookstore kind of tensed up like, oh God, here we go. Like teens being jerks. Right. And assuming that potentially they were going to start being really rude about it or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the other person who asked the initial question said, no, man, it's not like that at all. It's not the usual, like sad, like this one's really, really happy. And the other person goes, oh, okay, well, yeah, I'll check it out then. It was a completely unexpected way to embrace that story, thinking about how it isn't your typical trope.
No, it is the happiness and not the pain that drew you in because we're used to the pain. Back in the day when I first started at the bookstore and Lorraine McDaniel, I don't know if you've heard of her as an author.
No.
Oh my God. These stories were like the most dramatic angst, pain, suffering. And these stories were called like the death of her dog. Mm-hmm. That's not an actual title. Anyone who grew up in that era will know what I'm talking about. And, that's part of the reason why I wasn't a reader as a teenager. There wasn't anything like Heartstopper out there. There wasn't anything that focused on the happiness except for romance novels. So that's where my in was. It wasn't these angsty stories. It wasn't the Goosebumps. It wasn't the Babysitter's Club and, all that kind of stuff. I couldn't find my in to reading because there just wasn't anything out there at that point or that I hadn't discovered yet. I do want to say one more thing about Alice making her as the writer for the characters making the right choices. It's not, I want to be very clear, it's not about right or wrong, but it is about the authentic choices that the characters made. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is Nick is probably, in my opinion, one of the most authentic characters in the entire piece, or that we know so far.
Sure.
I'd like to know a lot more Elle and Tao and the other characters' stories, and not saying that Charlie is not authentic, but it's Nick's journey that we're really looking at in these beginning stories. And he was very authentic to himself. Mm-hmm. He didn't allow other students to influence him. He didn't allow some of these stereotypes to come to the surface.
Sure.
He didn't make the choices of, oh, I'm just going to pretend I'm straight and I'll go out with the girl. And it was the choices, too, of him being bi versus being gay. That, to me, was a very authentic choice.
Sure. Yeah.
And we can get into that when we talk about representation and things like that. But it's really this Alice wrote with hope, with integrity, and not the fear. Mm-hmm. And that was what was different. That was what was so captivating to me.
Yeah. I like that you said, too, Nick was very authentic, that he, from like the perspective of a bisexual character, you could see that he really did move along kind of in his own way. And there were still, those moments that were very fleeting where he was uncomfortable with something initially or wasn't quite sure. But 99% of the time, he was just like, I don't care. I'm just going to do this because it's what I want to do. And there was that very natural kind of like flow to him.
Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't just it was an uncomfortableness that we would all feel in those situations, but he worked through it. He didn't sit in the uncomfortableness and be like, okay, step back in fear. I can't be this way. He felt the uncomfort and worked through it. it was just a great journey to watch. It was a great journey to watch because it really felt truthful. It didn't feel like a character. Well, of course, a character always makes the best choices. Of course, a character always does the right thing or does the completely wrong thing because that's more drama. That's creating more drama. To me, what Alice did was she took that truthfulness, that integrity, that authenticity and said, how do I present this in an interesting way that keeps readers at first and viewers engaged enough to turn the page, engaged enough to hit next episode immediately.
So my question to you is, if somebody sitting out there thinking about this and wanting to do what Alice Oseman did, maybe not the exact same thing, not the exact same route, right? But just in terms of how do they tell a story that's focused on hope, that has that authenticity to it? What advice would we want to give them?
My first advice is always there's a door number 3. So there's not just one or two ways to do something. There's always another way to do it. The other thing I would say is, what would you hope to happen? What would lead you? Now, okay, this isn't to say for like a horror show or, a different type of genre piece or literary fiction piece that you may have to go in those dramatic areas, but you can always choose to find the way through and make, again, I'm going to fall back to the word authentic. What is authentic to that character? When I talk to my clients about creating story, sometimes I'll tell them start with the characters first. If you know the characters inside and out, you know what decisions they're going to make.
Yep.
So again, focusing on Nick, if Alice knew the character of Nick so well, she would know how he would react in certain situations. She would know what would draw him to using his fists to defend Charlie. Everything that Alice did is very easily done if you really know your characters and you know where you're going with the story. There can still be surprises along the way, but you can't do anything that's out of character. So number one to me for that question then would be stay true to your characters.
Yeah, that's
stay
good.
True to the characters.
That's what I was going to say, is you have to know your characters inside and out. You have to know, what they are. I think there's a balance between knowing your characters and knowing exactly what they're going to do, but also knowing the complexity of people. Sometimes people act out of character given certain stressful situations or given certain, dynamics, right? So you also have to know those situations too. What is going to make them change who they are in that moment a little bit to do something that they wouldn't normally do, to the point where sometimes your readers or your viewers are going to go, that person would never do that. And you're like,
yeah,
well, yeah,
but it worked for the story.
Right.
No,
it turns out they would, because here's what happens, right? Because here's why. This is the set of circumstances that led him or her to be different or to do that different thing that might be seen as out of character.
Yeah, truly, the mark of a good writer is the knowledge that it's all psychology. Every bit of it is psychology. Developing your characters with that psychological bent of what would they do? How would they react? What about their past makes them do certain things, react certain ways? But it's also psychology of the reader. I'm not saying that Alice went into this consciously doing this, but at some level, she was doing it subconsciously because she decided she was going to tell a story that focused on happiness and hope.
Sure.
She wanted to make her readers feel happiness and hope. So as a writer, when you're going into deciding what genre you're going to write, how you're going to develop your characters, you first have to ask yourself, how do I want my audience to feel? What do I want to make them feel? I want to make them feel scared. Okay, that's a starting point. Yep. How do I do that? How do I develop characters that are going to get into situations that are going to, make them scared? Again, a lot of this isn't conscious in a lot of writers, but at some level it's there because you're always conscious of how your audience is going to react to something. Otherwise, even if you're not thinking in the foreground of, oh, this is how I want my audience to react, you know how you want to react. So even if you're just writing for yourself, you know what kind of story you want to tell yourself. I want to write a happy ending because we just been through 2 years of pandemic and now the economy is in the toilet and I just want to feel happy.
Yes.
So let me write a happy story. And I do think part of the reason Heartstopper did so well for Netflix, again, not saying that it didn't do well in the books. I think it just wasn't widely known. There was not a vehicle that made the books known on a wider level. It was really known at the LGBTQIA level, which, we'll get into in later podcasts, but it wasn't known, on the level it is with Netflix and the diversity that it picked up. That's just the way of the world.
Yeah.
The way of the world. We needed that beacon of hope, and it hit at the right time. Yeah. So that's the other thing too.
I think some of the authors that are the best at telling, or storytellers, not necessarily authors, but the best storytellers, right, are the people that do understand people at a fundamental level, whether that's naturally or whether that's just through learned experience or anything like that. But because I correlate that to, have you ever watched the videos of Ariana Grande doing a impression of some other famous singer or person?
I've seen her do the impressions of Jennifer Coolidge.
She does dead on impressions of so many people. Like,
really?
Yes. Have her, look at some of the clips on like Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, etc. She does a really good job. And the reason I'm bringing her up is because it is some of the best musicians and artists in that genre, right? In song and singing. You can tell they're very naturally good at what they do because they understand. She has like perfect pitch, right? She understands pitch and tone, and she understands the sounds. And therefore, like, she's able to replicate that. The people that are good at getting you to just really hang on every word of a story.
Yeah.
The people that absolutely understand everything about how people think and act and react. So again, it's that fundamental, like, dig down deep into the soul of the character and just be that character.
Because the closer that you can remain to that psychological level of why someone does something, why a character does something, that's what we, as the reader, the viewer, the listener, that's what we connect to. There is not one. Yes, I am making a definitive statement here. There is not one highly successful storyteller, whether it's musician, writer, television, movies, storytellers. Not one out there that is successful that has not figured out how to connect their work, their words, their story to the audience on the other side.
Sure.
There is no money without that connection. People are bored. It's not going to be for everybody. Not everybody is going to like everything that's successful. And in fact, Everything Everywhere All at Once, my family started watching it. I'm loving it. Everybody else eventually left. I'm the only one sitting there.
Oh,
but it's a good story, and I connected to it. Yeah. I connected to it in a big way, and I loved it. Many others did.
So did a lot of people, it seems like.
I was just going to say, the award season, it gave it all the accolades, and it deserved them in my book. Yeah, so, it doesn't have to be for everyone. And in fact, because I started working at the bookstore when I was a teenager, when I was just a reader, I figured out early on that my job was not to just sell books. It was to find the right book for the right person.
Sure.
That's all I had to do. I didn't have to like it.
Yeah.
I mean, I could think it's total crap. But this person says, oh, this is what I like. And, I used to actually, when people would come in and they try to describe what they liked, I would actually ask them, do you like movies? Tell me a movie that you liked. And then I could connect the movie to, this is the style that they like. And this is what we got a lot of those, oh, I'm looking for a book for my grandmother. What does she like to read? I don't know. What titles, what authors does she have laying around? I don't know. Okay, what movies does she like to watch? What TV does she like to watch? I get it there. But the point is, again, there is going to be different things for different people. So is Heartstopper for everyone? I'm not going to say it's for everyone. Can everyone get something out of it? Absolutely. We can see a next episode for part 2 of the introduction.
There we go. So, if anybody listening wants to find out more about you or connect with you online, where would they go?
You can find me at bookmatchmaker.com, all the social medias as Bookmatchmaker. You can also just reach me via email, Christina at bookmatchmaker.com. And you, Matt, how can they find you?
Online, most every social except for the bird site. I am at Sarcassem, SARCASSEM. And you can even find me at cassem.omg.lol as well for more details.
Okay. Until next time, happy reading.
All right. Find a good story, curl up with a good book, watch a good show. Just love it.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to the podcast. We really hope that you're enjoying every bit of it, but we would love to hear your feedback. Drop us an email either to matt@writeoutloudpod.com or Christina@bookmatchmaker.com. We would love to hear your thoughts. What's working, what's not working, and what do you want to hear more of? Thanks so much. We really appreciate it.